Welcome, everyone, to the Co-Creators Convergence Thursday night Creator Convo. I'm Noel Marshall, and I'm here with my beloved.
Hi, everyone. This is Bob. We're delighted that you're here with us this evening, watching on Facebook here in our Zoom room, or in timeless time in the archives of the Co-Creators Convergence website, where this will be put in perpetuity. Don, so happy to have you with us tonight and have you share your gift to the shift in humanity with everyone. Thank you.
So welcome, everyone. This is a very international call with guests from Uganda. Don is in Tokyo, and Don Hinman, we always call him Dr. Don. He's a very old friend of Bob and myself, and we will tell a few stories, but one story I will tell you is that he knew us before we got married. And so he's got a lot of stories about that. In fact, he came to our wedding party when we had, that was in 1987. So we're going to focus on Don tonight, but I just wanted to welcome you here, Don. And we're just so extremely happy to have you here. So I'm going to tell everyone just a little bit about the Co-Creators Convergence, then we'll come back. Bob will do a welcoming, centering, and I'll tell you more about Don, and then I'll turn it over to him. He has such beautiful pictures to share and stories. So stand by. Let me just share this with you. Welcome, everyone. And I'm so excited to have Don here tonight and to view some of his beautiful pictures and artwork. I don't like to call them pictures. We're going to go to an art gallery tonight. And let me tell you a little bit about my friend Don, who we've got to visit in Tokyo, but you've been there over 20 years.
Yeah.
And he is an amateur devotee of black and white film photography. He has honed his skills in photography in New York, Japan, East and Southeast Asia. He believes that he should give free rein to his inner photographer's voice and follow wherever his camera leads. He shoots exclusively in black and white. He develops his own film and prints the photographs himself in the darkroom on silver plate paper. So he's a purist. So I love that about him. He's a transplanted Midwesterner from Iowa via New York. We met in Baltimore, Maryland. We used to work together, but he has lived in Tokyo for 20 years. And during that time, he has mounted 13 different photographic solo exhibits. And he's going to talk to about the first of his 3 books. Well, one's still in process, but without any further ado, Don, I'm not going to let you say anything yet, because Bob still has to say something. Then we're going to turn it over to you, my good friend. So I just ask you, this will be interactive. So when he shows a picture and you want to say something or point something out about that, Don would welcome conversation. Would that be right, Don?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. So Bob, go ahead.
Thank you. So folks can just speak up, or you can use your reaction button on the bottom panel to put your digital hand up, and Noel will recognize you. So I would like to offer a centering for all of us to really be together this evening, to lock arms in this circle, knowing that the circle is the circle of all of life, the circle of all of humanity. As I said before, in timeless time, people will watch this in an archived place on the internet, but they're also a part of the circle that we sit in tonight. And so I would invite us to imagine in our mind's eye that each of us are lighting a candle, because throughout time, fire has been the center of rituals and ceremony, which this is tonight. Every time we gather, it is ritual, it's ceremony, it's community. In mystery schools throughout the ages, fire has been used as a connection to the sacred, to the divine, and to one another. So in our mind's eye, as we light a flame, it represents the same flame lit around the world and throughout all of time. It's the same fire that our forefathers, our ancient forefathers, sat around and told stories, and that's what we're going to do tonight. It's the same fire that our parents and our grandparents cooked on. Maybe some of us might have roasted a marshmallow or something else over an open fire. The fact is, fire connects us to each other through all of time and space. Imagine for a moment that with this international call tonight from Uganda and from Tokyo, Japan, all of us sharing one little spark of our life into the circle that we sit. In our gatherings, we bring awareness to the elemental flame as we light our candle. The sacred flame is witness to our experiences and our deep work together. The candle we light in our mind's eye is a mirror of the flame within each of us. That is our creativity, and it is our divine spark. So thanks once again for everyone joining us in this sacred circle of creation and creation witness tonight.
Thank you, Noel and Bob, for the introduction, and also thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. Or this morning in Tokyo, tonight in the U.S., and late night in Uganda. As Noel mentioned in her introduction, I've known Bob and Noel for a long time, almost 40 years. And so when they asked me to join and speak at this group, I was very readily accepted the opportunity to speak. Looking at the roster of speakers in the future that Noel showed, and these past couple of speakers that I've listened to, it's a very humbling experience for me, because I am just an amateur, just a photographer, actually, I was going to say, but it's my pleasure to be able to share with you some of my journey through photography. Before we move to the pictures, I think two things that I would like to tell you about me and about my photography before we get started. I think, first of all, why photography? As a youngster, I was sort of passively interested in photography, like many people were in those days. A little brownie camera, taking color snapshots, and but just very casual. And then I lived in New York for about 25 years. And I remember very clearly a discussion that I had with a friend when the subject of photography came up. And he said, well, if you're interested in photography, black and white is definitely the direction you should go. And if you are going to learn black and white, the place to do it is at the International Center for Photography, ICP, here in New York. And so I started taking nighttime and weekend classes in black and white photography, and very readily became so involved in photography that it has sort of taken up my entire extracurricular activity. And now that I've retired, it's 100% or 120% activity. But of course, that doesn't explain to you why I find photography so absorbing. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One is that I have often a discussion with people, why do people take pictures? Now in the digital age, everybody carries a camera every day in their iPhone or whatever. And but why do we take pictures? And for me, the answer is taking pictures proves that I was here. Not in the sense of this was Bob and Noel's wedding party in 1980, whatever it was, but in a more expressive or emotional point of view. And that was one of the strong things that I learned from ICP, is that photography comes from the heart. It's a matter of expression. It doesn't come from the mind or from the eye, but it is really a mode of expression. After I moved here to Japan 20 years ago, I also started using photography as a mode of exploration. Because when I came here, I had worked for a Japanese pharmaceutical company in New York for 10 years before I moved here. So I knew a little bit about Japan, but living here obviously is very different than coming here for a week for a business trip. And so I started using photography as a means of exploration. Japan is a very different culture from the US, that goes without saying. Tokyo is a huge city and many, many neighborhoods. And I just wanted to know more about Tokyo and Japan. And so photography became a means of exploration. The next question is, why Nepal? I made a conscious decision when I came here to Tokyo that as long as I was in Japan, I was going to travel within Asia rather than going back to the States or to Europe or to any of the other parts of the globe, but I would focus on Asia, East Asia and Southeast Asia. First, I spent a lot of time, several years, going to various countries in Southeast Asia, and finally completed my collection of all 9 countries in Southeast Asia. And so then I thought, well, what's next? And I thought, I could either go east to Indonesia and Micronesia and so forth, or I could go west to Bhutan, Nepal, and so forth. And so the first time I went to Nepal was just, I don't want to say, a checkbook. I have a long list of places I want to go, and Nepal was one. So I thought, okay, I'll go to Nepal, check that, and then I can go to someplace, the next destination. But when I first went to Nepal, I realized that there was something very special, very different about the Nepali culture and Nepali people and the country of Nepal. And so I soon realized that one visit wasn't enough. So over the next 4 years, I went every year, and I was planning to continue but COVID came in to stop stop everybody's travel. So I have been back to Nepal 4 times, and it is a very rich culture, and it was very stimulating for me as a photographer to be able to both explore and to express my thoughts and my feelings about the exploration of Nepal. So that's why Nepal. I think a discussion. I really want to encourage everybody to ask questions. That I really like to have feedback while I'm talking about my photographs. Bob, in his introduction, mentioned the value of fire for culture, and for photography, light is the important element. And I often say that photography is really the language of light, because the key to good photography is learning how to read the light, so to speak. Let's see. So in my visits to Nepal, I have gone to the old capital called Bhaktapur, the current capital called Kathmandu, a small village in the Kathmandu Valley called Kokana, and then finally to mountain villages in actually the foothills of the Himalayas. And so those 4 areas, geographic areas, I've covered.
Hey, Don.
Yes.
Were you with the guide, and what is the language there? How did you arrive with your camera and your backpack, and how did you get around, and what about dinero? Few of those culture things, but maybe you're going to explain those. So I might be jumping the gun here.
No, that is the appropriate question. I have a guide. I have a guide. I have gone with a guide each time. The native language in Nepal, they say Nepal is a country with 56 subcultures and 57 languages. There is a national language, Nepalese language, and then each of the subcultures within Nepal has its own language. And in fact, in the school system, all children are required to learn 2 languages, the national language and their local language. In Bhaktapur and Kathmandu, a few people do speak English, but I find it very valuable to have a guide to go with me. I just by coincidence engaged a guide whose name is Amit Banmala, and as it turns out, he is also a photographer, an amateur a photographer, and so he and I hit it off as both photographer and guide and traveler. So he has gone with me I have gone with him in all the trips that I've taken within Nepal.
Thanks, Don.
Okay. Bhaktapur is the old capital of Nepal. It was the capital for about 300 years, and then about 700 years ago, the capital was moved to Kathmandu. I like to think of Bhaktapur and Kathmandu. Bhaktapur is a city known for history, art, and culture. Kathmandu is the seat of government and industry. So they're very different characteristics of these two cities. I like to think of them as sort of, Kathmandu is like Washington, D.C. in the US, and Bhaktapur is more like Boston, where I think history and culture are probably more important than industry. So that's my comparison of Bhaktapur and Kathmandu. The center of Bhaktapur is a very old walled city. This wall was built maybe 700 years ago, and some of it still remains, the original wall or the rebuilt wall. And inside are many, many historic buildings and monuments from 400, 500, 700 years ago. These buildings have either been maintained or been restored, and is now a cultural heritage site. But my interest in Bhaktapur is what's behind that cultural center. I'm not interested in the more common tourist destination kind of places. And this is one way that my friend and guide Amit has been very helpful, because he is a native of Bhaktapur. He knows all the back roads and the back alleys, and he knows most of the people. And so this is very helpful for me to get in beyond the surface of Bhaktapur. One of my earliest recollections of Bhaktapur, the first time I went there, in the evening, Amit-san and I were having a glass of hot spiced tea on a balcony outside of a tea house. And about a block away is the old town square, where there's a famous 10-story pagoda, and it's either the oldest or the largest Hindu temple in Nepal are located on this square. At night, it's mostly dark, but I could hear groups of chanters, and they were chanting old Sanskrit chants, and the singing is very mournful, I would say, enjoyable but sort of mournful. And they accompany themselves with drum and cymbals. It's a very simple musical story. It was listening to these chanters in late at night got me interested in the idea of chanters. So chanters both during the day and at night, morning and night. Usually they are groups of men only. Occasionally I have seen mixed groups, and only once have I seen a group consisting only of women. But it's a very common practice in Bhaktapur and Kathmandu as well. Here you can see, this is a group of chanters who meets every morning for a couple of hours, and they sit around in a circle, sitting on the floor, and there is one leader. This man is the leader, and you can't see, but behind this pot is an ancient book written in Sanskrit that has the words of the chant, but it's an ancient language and nobody knows what it means. They can read it phonetically, but they don't know what is the meaning of the song. Anyway, they sit around for a couple of hours. They chant in what is called a challenge and response format, where they divide up the group into two, and the first group gives the first line of the chant, and then the second group repeats that line, and then the second line, and repeat the second line, and so forth, to go through the entire chant. And it's a very moving kind of experience for me as an outsider, to just sit and listen. They were very welcoming to me. I think Amit-san probably had introduced me to them beforehand, but they were very comfortable with me joining the group. They offered me tea and biscuits and invited me to take photographs and so on. So it's a very moving experience. Now, before I show you the next picture, I want to explain a little bit about the background here, because there is a unique feature of architecture in Bhaktapur that is shown very clearly in this picture. We'll come back to it later. But you'll notice they're sitting on the floor here, and there are, it's a recessed area in a building, in a residential building. So 3 walls will be brick like this, but the 4th wall is open to, this is the street level here. And originally these areas were built in an era before hotels were available. These areas were, travelers were allowed to sleep overnight in these rooms for 1 or 2 nights. Now they're hotels, of course, and so they are used mostly as social venues rather than hotel. You can see here, this is the drum that they use to accompany themselves. And I think this guy has the cymbal. You can't really see. They're small hand cymbals that they use for accompanying. Now you'll notice that, like I said, this is the leader, and what is he doing? Well, this picture shows you they are passing around a water pipe. And what is in the water pipe, I will be polite and assume that it's tobacco, but it may well be something that's more pharmaceutical. I don't know, I didn't ask the question. I have to remember to ask Amit-san. But that's chanters. You hear chanters all over the neighborhood in the morning, and then at night in the town square. Questions about chanters before we move to the next? Okay. Next, I want to move on to some social activities in Bhaktapur. Bhaktapur is, all of Nepal seems to be a very social culture. And one of the ways that it shows this is in the architecture of these old buildings. You notice that in the background, well, these are 5 guys who are just sitting around chatting in the morning. This is a social time for them. 4 of them are wearing traditional Nepali dress with the sandals and this kind of hat that is typical, and a sweater vest. This guy is a younger generation, so he's wearing sneakers and a white dress shirt and no hat. So I think there's a generational gap there. What you notice behind them is this old building, which I don't know, maybe 100 or even as old as 200 years old, the buildings in this part of the city. And they're very well maintained, as you can see. And also, notice the carving, the intricate carving in the pillars, in the beams, the windows, and some of this is just decorative. This is all carved by hand, very old, and then painted glossy black. So it makes a very vivid picture of the building. But at the front of the building is this low ledge here that is specifically built into the building as a place for socializing. So this is what, there are three types of these areas. This one happens to be called a pati. And in almost all of the old buildings in Bhaktapur, this is incorporated just as part of the building, but I don't know whether the architecture reflects the social culture or the social culture takes advantage of the architecture. I think it's probably the former, but there's this specific area where people are just casually sitting and chatting in the morning, afternoon, evening, whatever. So let's see, another kind of social area, and this is similar to where the chanters were sitting. This is called a falcha, and here you can see that it's open to the street on the front. In this case, a bare wood floor, pillars to support the roof overhead, and people just sit around in the morning or any time of the day and chat. In this case, again, I think that there is both a generation gap between this younger chap and this older fella, but there's also some very intense nonverbal communication going on. I don't know what the story was, and actually, if I knew the story, I wouldn't tell you, because I believe that as the photographer, my role is to show you. Your role as the viewer is to respond and to interpret from your own perspective. So I don't want to tell you how you should perceive this picture. I would like you to use your imagination to try to tell, figure out what the story is.
I love that, Don. I think that's great. And
yeah.
I'm wondering that, some of them, especially in the last couple pictures, they were kind of wearing like the same things, the vest and the hat. Now,
Yes.
Do you think that's related? Maybe I'm just supposed to guess, but to any specific religion, culture, heritage sort of thing? I do like the hats, though. I'll have to say that.
Yes, yes. Now, this is part of traditional Nepali clothing. And there seems to be a generation gap in that the older people wear the cap, the older men wear the cap. I'll show you with the women in a couple of minutes. And usually they wear a vest of some sort over their shirt, and then will wear sandals. So this is traditional Nepali clothing.
Don, this is Bob. Also, since these last three have been all groups, maybe this is the right time for this question of your, as a photographer, your etiquette and the cultural differences, either there or elsewhere, of people having their picture taken and permission. And was this picture posed, or maybe I'm supposed to answer this one? Was this picture posed, or was it candid? Did they know you were taking their picture? All this sort of things. And since you've traveled throughout Asia, not just in Nepal, maybe you could broaden the answer also to other cultures as well.
Yes, yes. The question of permission usually arises, and my answer is yes. To the extent that it's possible, I always ask permission before I take a photograph. Language being a barrier, but we do live in a global village, and usually just showing my camera and pointing and with gestures, they can understand. And in Nepal, almost everybody has agreed. I have since, Amit has taught me how to say ma photo keshte, which is Nepali for may I take your picture. And so sometimes I will use that. It makes people feel a little more comfortable, I think, even though probably my pronunciation is terrible, but at least they give me credit for trying. In terms of how to approach people, number one is I approach slowly. I try to be as inconspicuous as possible, but just sit and wait for a while before I approach people. It gives them time to adapt and decide whether they are willing or not. Also, having Amit as a guide is very useful in that he often prefaces the photo shoot. He also knows many of these people, so they are more comfortable with him. This one, Noel asked if this is posed, and I don't know whether I should say this or not, but I didn't realize the eye contact between this guy and this guy until I saw the negative in the dark room. When I was on the street, I was just aware of 4 men sitting in the falcha chatting, and I realized that there was a potential photograph there, but I didn't pick up on this particular aspect. And that's part of my philosophy and part of what I learned from ICP is that I can't force myself onto the photograph. I have to wait and let the photograph come to me. And so was this intentional? Was it unintentional? Like I said, in this case, I didn't notice the key figure in this image until I saw it in the darkroom.
Hey, Don, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
How many pictures are you taking on these trips that you then, did you take like 5 or 6 here and then one of them just popped out at you and you said, this is the one I want to do? What's the secret there?
Okay. First of all, to emphasize or to reiterate that I do take film photography, that none of this is digital. So when you ask how many, I think in terms of frames and rolls rather than individual images. On a visit like this, I typically will take 3 or 4 rolls in a day. So that's 36 exposures each. So maybe 100 to 150 individual frames per day.
And about how many ended up in your first book?
100.
Cool. All right.
My goal is, and this goes back to Ansel Adams, who was a famous American photographer from more than 100 years ago. My goal is in one roll of film, there should be one frame that is good enough to print. And then still after that, there's an editing process.
Very good.
Okay. Let me find my cursor. Like I said, I will now show you the clothing that the women wear. This is traditional Nepali clothing for women, which is sort of similar to Indian sari, except that this would be made of cotton rather than of silk. Shawl around the top, long skirt, rather bold print that they use. And one feature is that married women are required to wear something red to show that they are married. So it may be, let's see, this woman has a scarf around her neck. So sometimes it's only the scarf that is red, or sometimes the shawl will be a red pattern. Sometimes the whole dress will be a pattern based on red. The other thing to show here is I showed you the seating areas for the falcha and pati, which are public seating areas. Those are mostly for men. Sometimes I see women mixed with them, but mostly for men. But women then will socialize. This is the front door to their house here. Another front door, another front door. And this is the front step. So they will sit on the front step with their neighbors and socialize that way. Another, I hesitate to say this is a social custom because she's by herself. I see this quite frequently, that usually it's older women who are just, well, I shouldn't say just, who are sitting in front of, or behind the front of, sitting at the window and with a blanket draped over the edge. And they seem to be just sitting and watching. It's a very curious custom. Like I said, I don't know whether this can be described as a social custom or this is just part of the culture. And this is the final picture from Bhaktapur. I'm looking at the clock here to judge how far we're going. So, Noel, you can cut me off when I reach saturation point. But there's a story behind this photograph, and like I said, I don't tell people how to interpret the photograph. But in this case, the environment, the situation is important, I think. It was late in the afternoon, and we went into a little courtyard behind a block of houses. And in the middle of this courtyard was a Hindu temple or shrine. And there were, I don't know, maybe 100 people milling around and talking, and the kids were playing, and then the men were playing some sort of game that looked like hopscotch. But all of a sudden, at 4 o'clock, the priest came out and started ringing the bell, and that started this ceremony or the service. But he would ring one bell, and then 2 of his assistants would follow suit. So it would be ding, ding, ding. ding, ding, ding. And then he went to double beat, ding, 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 ding. And then 3, ding, 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 ding. And there were different kinds of bells, low timbre bells, high pitched bells, all variety of bells. And they just kept getting more and more bells, faster and faster, until in the end, and there must have been, I don't know, 100 bells or something in this shrine. And at the end, all of them were going sort of randomly for several minutes. And it was such then they all stopped simultaneously. And for me, as an outsider, I don't understand Hindu religion at all, but just the experience of listening to those bells, and then the fact that they all stopped at once. There was no trailing off. They all stopped. It was a very moving experience for me to hear. And this man was one of the people who were sitting around waiting for and enjoying, I don't know, the ceremony.
Beautiful. Now we're going to go to some other communities now, right, Dom?
Yeah. Yes.
Wonderful. So far you've shown us mostly beautiful people, but you also, I've seen some of your work, some of the, I'm trying to get an idea for the environment there. So this is probably high altitude. They probably have cold and hot, the 4 seasons. And, what time of year were you there where most of these pictures taken?
Yes, thank you for reminding me. I usually go at either September and October is their festival season, or at New Year's. And it's a temperate climate. Bhaktapur is about 2,000 meters. And so is Kathmandu and Kokana, the next 2 places. But then in the mountain villages, be about 2,500 meters. Yes, most of the printed work is with people. I also try to take pictures of architecture and of monuments and landscapes, but just to be honest, I don't do very well with architecture and landscape photographs. So doesn't stop me from trying, but I don't know why, but I find that the best work that I do is with people.
Well, that's really obvious, Dom. These, when you look at these photographs, you can go really deep, with the people and feel them. You're not just seeing them, we're really feeling them. And I really am enjoying that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This surprises me because, as Noel and Bob know very well, I'm a very shy person. So why I gravitate toward taking pictures, I don't know. I've never analyzed it, and I don't want to analyze it. All right. Moving to Kokana is a small village in the Kathmandu Valley. It's probably 200 or 300 people living there. The first time I went, there was a huge earthquake in the previous year, 2015. And Kokana was very close to the epicenter of that earthquake. So when I went there the following year, 2016, they were still in the process of cleaning up from the earthquake. And I've gone there 4 years in a row, and I can see the progress of their recovery from the huge devastation that they experienced during the earthquake. Noel, you wanted to see some landscapes. It's one of the few landscapes that turned out okay. You can see here, this is on the way to Kokana. It's a footpath. These are old brick or stone buildings, 2 or 3 stories high, but it's in the valley, but in the distance you can see the beginning of the mountains. So that'll give you a little indication of the setting. Again, here in Kokana, there are designated structures, social clubs for older men. And it's always on the corner of the street, and it's just a simple room that is dedicated for especially older men for socializing. And again, you can see this guy on the right is wearing more traditional clothing. The bamboo mat. They do take off their sandals when they go indoors. This man, you'll notice, has, and you can't tell in black and white, but he has a red symbol on his forehead, which means that he has been to the shrine in the morning for prayers. So either the women have the red area, painted area. Some men have the red painted area, or they put a flower in their cap behind their ear to demonstrate that, yes, they have been to the shrine in the morning. As I said, I have been to Kokana 4 years in a row. It's a little unusual that in Kokana, there's a wide main street and then very narrow side streets. Most villages, all the streets are narrow, but in Kokana, the main street is wide. I was walking down the main street and talking with Amit, and suddenly my little voice said, "Stop, turn around and go back." I can't explain it other than it's a little voice, or else an image that goes onto my retina, and it takes a while before it gets to the brain center. I've often had this happen. But anyway, my voice said, "Turn around and go back. You missed something." And here was this woman sitting on her steps in front of the building. And I immediately said, okay, this is a portrait in the making. Asked her permission. And after she gave permission, you notice she kept her original posture. One of the problems with asking permission is sometimes people will say yes, but then they stand up straight and give you a fake smile, and then, that's not natural. But most of the people in Nepal don't react to the camera. They accept it, but they don't react. So she gave me permission to take her photograph. Very expressive face, I think. She's wearing a scarf and otherwise traditional Nepali dress. But notice also, this is the outside of her house. This is the window, intricately carved window, and the window sill and the frame on the outside. So carving is a definite, hand carving is definitely part of the Nepali culture. as I said, I've been back to Coconut 4 times in a row, and I managed to find this woman each year. In this case, sitting in front of the same place a year later. I think she has a wonderful face. And in the following year, you can see she's beginning to age. A little more worry in her face, a little more wrinkles. And then the following year, I found her husband and her family sitting outside of the house, but she was inside, bedridden with severe asthma. So I didn't get a chance to take a picture of her on the 4th time. I have several of the people that I have met every year for 4 years, and so I have a little mini collection. And then the final one from Coconut, and this is obviously an older chap. He and some of his friends were sitting on a low wall, and they were chanting. They were singing really more late in the afternoon. And I came around the curve, and there they were, and asked his permission. And again, he said yes, but then they continued singing, which is perfect for me as a photographer. I don't want them to stop what they're doing. I want to catch them as they are. And with a lot of luck, this one particularly turned out quite well. So that's Coconut. I have lots of stories of Coconut, but we don't have time. Right. Noel, how are we doing on time? You want me to finish with the mountain villages, or should we stop here?
No, let's go ahead. We do have some questions, but let's finish with the mountain villages, and then let's leave some time for some questions. So at least 15 minutes. That's okay.
All right. I tend to get very enthusiastic about talking about my photographs and forget about the time. So I appreciate the feedback. Mountain villages, fascinating experiences. There are many, many small villages these are in the foothills of the Himalayas in the Annapurna region. And some of them are inaccessible by Jeep or 4-wheel drive. Some of them we drive to the end of the road and then start walking, climbing, and maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours from the end of the road to the village. Others, they are gradually building roads up to the villages. But this is a very distinct kind of mountain village culture. Here again, this is early morning. This is one of the few landscapes that turned out okay. There's a valley here, and then over here, just outside the frame, you can begin to see actually the Himalayas and a few peaks of the Himalayas above the mountains, or the other mountains. But in this case, there was a fog that came in and blanketed the valley. So quite a dramatic, moving experience. I sat out on the balcony for 2 hours, an hour before sunset, an hour after sunrise. No, hour before sunrise, an hour after sunrise. And the valley was absolutely quiet. You couldn't hear anything. When the fog came in from behind me, and rolled down into the valley. And at first it was so dense, you couldn't see anything. The fog just completely engulfed the hotel. And then it gradually moved down into the valley. This is, I like to think of this as sort of looking from the opposite direction. This is going from the mountain village down to the trading post that is down at the bottom of the mountain. Several things to notice here. Well, the obvious is this couple. We stopped and talked to them. They make these baskets by hand. This is their livelihood. And then they live in the village, make the baskets, and then they have to carry them to the trading post to sell them. And they walk. They said it takes an entire day, morning to evening, for them to walk carrying these baskets down to the trading post. Then they will spend 2 or 3 days selling the baskets, and then another day walking to get home. So it's a very simple life. They rely a lot on walking or on mules. The other thing is, you can see this is a village that has a road of sorts, and this is the road that goes, and you can see that it's a very rough road for only for 4-wheel drive vehicles. And then again, this is early morning when the fog was still hanging on the forest in the background. I want to show you a few elements of village life, and this one I call transportation. This particular village has no road to connect the village with the outside world. This is from the village to the trading post is about 2 hours, 1.5 hours walking, and you can see that their streets are too narrow for a car, even if they could somehow get a car there. So there are no cars, no motorbikes or anything, no traffic at all in the village. They rely on mule train to send goods from the village to the trading post, and then get supplies from the trading post back to the village. And this guy, there are several mule trains that make the trip. He would go twice a day to the trading post and back with his mule train. Also fortuitously, each mule has a bell around his or her neck. The purpose there being that if the mule strays away from the mule train, then it's easier to find them. But the side effect is, when I was sitting on the terrace having breakfast in the morning, I could hear the mule train coming down the mountain and going down further, and hear the jingle of bells. It was really quite an enjoyable experience. The homes in the mountains, most of the homes are made of stone. They are old, been passed down from generation to generation for 100 to 200 years. Inside, the walls are covered with adobe that is made from cow dung, but it doesn't smell. It's a very pleasant adobe. This is the kitchen in this particular house, where we had dinner. Just and this is the housewife, and she sat in this position for the entire time that she was preparing and serving dinner. So you can see behind her here is the stove. It's an open charcoal or wood burning stove with a grill for fast cooking. And there's no chimney. There's just a hole in the ceiling where the smoke escapes. So you can see the smoke has darkened the walls inside. That's number one cooking area. Number two cooking area here is for slow cooking. And then this is a pressure cooker for cooking rice. I forgot to tell you. The houses have no running water, and only some of the houses have electricity. And those that have electricity, it's usually a single incandescent bulb hanging from the ceiling in the main room. So no running water, and only 50% have electricity. So she has to go out in the morning, and behind her is the pot where she has collected water from the stream outside of her house. And so that's what she uses for cooking. And cooking oil. And then behind her are all the spices and condiments that she uses in cooking. So she sits in this same position, turning from one place to another through the entire process of preparing, cooking, and serving the meal. Another industry in the mountains is farming. They grow rice, and because it's up in the mountains, they have to terrace the rice fields. Here, there's only, I think, 6 or 8 terraces that you can see, but on the steeper parts of the mountains, there can be as many as 30 or 40 terraces from the valley to the top of the mountain. And planting and harvesting is all done by hand. So in the spring, they have to carry the seeds and their tools 30 terraces high to start the planting. And then in the fall, they again have to walk up to the top of the terraces, carrying the burlap bags, and harvest the rice, carry it on their back to their home. Everything done by hand. Now, you may ask, well, where do they get the burlap sacks that they carry the rice in? Weaving is another source of income for the villages. Here, these women are, of course, by hand, weaving the burlap bags that the farmers are then going to use for carrying the rice down from the field to the village or onto the trading post if necessary. And this is, again, it's a social activity. You can see there's one loom, but 4 women are in the process of the various stages of weaving. So farming, hunting, weaving are the main industries in these villages. Okay. I think we'll stop here, Noel, for 2 reasons. 1, my voice is giving out, and 2, I can see that the time, I've spent too much time talking. So let's stop here for, if I may, one more. As Noel mentioned, I have published so far 2 books and maybe 1 more in the process. The first one on the left is Opening Our Markets in Various Countries in Southeast Asia. Ichiba is the Japanese word for open air market. And then all the photographs that I've been showing you are in the second book called Nepal is Calling. And that one was just published at the end of last year. So.
Wonderful, Don. And Nepal is Calling is available on Amazon, is it not?
Yes, it is.
Wonderful. Well, let's go ahead. I'm going to remove the spotlight here, and you might want to go ahead and
I have to.
Yeah.
Oops. Stop share. Okay.
Okay. And I'm going to put this in gallery. Don, all of a sudden I'm in black and white. I don't know what
You're
happened.
black and white. Good. You're advancing.
That's right. Okay. Yes. And you can also find out more about Don if you go to his website, DJ Hinman, HINMAN.com. So, hey, Mike, Betty, welcome. And I know our dear friend from Uganda had to get off. We've had quite a following on Facebook. So I know we have more questions. Mike, do you want to jump in here?
Yes, I do. I have a couple of questions. First of all, Dr. Don, have you encountered any other photographers who deal mainly in black and white? Or is it a rarity for photographers to deal in black and white? I've not heard too much about it lately.
Yes, this is, we're seeing fewer and fewer photographers in black and white, fewer and fewer magazines in black and white. And actually, one of the limitations is getting film and paper for black and white printing. It is becoming more and more rare. Although I've heard that recently there has been a movement, especially among younger photographers who grew up with digital, are now switching to film. And I think that for me, that's a very encouraging trend. There's a huge difference between black and white and color, between black and white and film and digital.
Oh,
That's fascinating. Do you do any color work?
I used to do color, but I have just essentially have stopped using color.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you.
yeah.
I think that color is fine if you want to show something or if you want to record something, but black and white is really the medium if you want to express something, and that's the big difference between color and black and white. Also, I don't know if I should say this, but another reason I like black and white is because I can control every step of the process. Shooting, developing, printing, I can do everything. With color, I shoot, and then I have to send it to the lab. They process it. I don't know how to print in color, and so I have to rely on someone else to do the printing. And for me, the darkroom is the essential part. The most creative part is in the darkroom.
Well, Don, isn't it getting the chemicals to do the processing? Isn't that getting harder? Don't you have to use a certain kind of silver solution?
Yes, that's another thing, is to get the chemicals, the developer and the fixer and so forth. These are becoming more and more difficult to obtain. They're common chemicals, and theoretically it would be possible to make your own developer just by ordering the raw materials and mix it at home. But to get commercial chemicals is becoming more and more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Also the darkroom. In all of Tokyo, there are only 3 commercial black and white darkrooms that are now available for rental.
Wow. So
Wow.
when you say that you get like one picture out of a roll of 36 or something like that, you don't develop all 36, do you? Or do
Oh,
you?
yes.
Oh, you do.
I developed the whole roll. The roll is all developed at once.
Oh, okay.
And
And you're examining the developed, I'll call it the frame, individual frames to make a decision on, is this worthy of being enlarged to look?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
So
then
there's-
out of this, mountain of pictures that you have, how do you select down to 100 to be in your book?
That is a long and creative process. Like I said, each roll has 36 frames on it, and there is a way you can put the negatives in a plastic sleeve and then get a positive print of the whole roll where the images are the same size as the negative. And so I have one that's called a contact sheet, one contact sheet for each roll. And from that, I can look and see which ones are potential. Okay. And usually I will choose maybe 4 or 5 from a roll that are possible. And then I have to choose, well, the next step is, okay, out of the 5, what are the best? What are the best ones? And usually choose 1 or 2 from each roll as possibilities, and then do what we call a work print, which is a very quick and easy printing process in the darkroom. So then I have maybe 400 or 500 work prints, and sit down and sort out from them. Usually the theme comes at that point. I don't have in mind when I'm in the field, oh, I need to do chanters here, I need to do the mule trains there. No, I take everything when I'm on site. But usually it's when I have the work prints, I can say, okay, well, I can see that these would make a group, these would make a group, and 2 or 3 different themes. And then from each group, what's the best? Because I don't print anything less than the best.
Of course.
Sometimes it's very, sometimes it's very frustrating. There's a negative that I really, really would like to be, but it just isn't good enough. But then choosing the best. So then there's maybe 200 prints that are final prints. Then again,
you got to cut it in half.
Yeah, yes. And in this case, that was when the publisher got involved. We had a work team. We reviewed we actually reviewed all of the contact sheets, reviewed all of the 200 test or final prints, and then had to select 100 out of those as the best.
Wow. Do you have a copy of your book right there that you can hold up? I mean, is this like a coffee table book, or how? Let's.
Where is it?
We need to order a copy for him.
I don't have any book.
I'm on blur, so where?
Yeah, you got to put it right in the camera. We can't see you. We
Right
got
in
to
the
see
camera.
it. Yeah, with your blur background, it's not coming through.
Anyway, I tell people, well, coffee table size, but remember, this is coffee tables in Japan.
Right.
Smaller, huh?
Well, I really appreciate that, just that description, Don, because it really is, it's a description of the creation. And obviously different types of photography are for different purposes. And if a photojournalist is going to an event, whatever, the purpose at the front end is different.
Predetermined purpose.
Yeah. And so there, as they narrow it down, and with other teams of people narrow it down, it's for a different purpose. And I really, as you were talking, I appreciate you saying you aren't going to answer the question. Let the viewer answer the question of what it is. Because my questions were about some that I realized, well, I shouldn't be asking you the question. I should be interpreting that for myself or whatever. Young people's clothes versus the traditional clothes of the older men. You also, in fact, you mentioned sound, and obviously a black and white photo doesn't depict sound, but does it? And because if you had shown us some of your pictures in Tokyo, and having been to Tokyo, I know there's some noise in the street in Tokyo compared to the mountain, because you did mention in the mountain village that you used the word quiet or something about that. And so the opportunity for the viewer to really stand in allowing themselves to be in that moment with that image, and you not having it predetermined. What I was trying to tell you in this picture was that it was a very noisy behind these people here, or the men that chant each morning or play instruments and that sort of thing. And I really appreciate what we repeated from you that we put in the notes early on. There was, it proves I was here, and it's recording an expression of the heart. And I appreciate it personally right now, because we've spent the last couple of weeks going through my mom's 10 boxes of photos of the family, all the way back to when she was naked as baby laying on the blanket, and her high school pictures and everything else. And now Noel and I are going through, as you know, Don, we've had some adventures in our partnership on this planet, and going through those and saying, do we need these anymore? What do these say? And so that us taking the photo in the first place as an expression of the heart, an expression of the experience and how we felt at that time when we were, like you said, whatever, name an event in our life that we have photo evidence of. So thank you so much. I really appreciate this evening.
It's been wonderful. And Don, I feel this is it's a very spiritual calling, as I see what you have. And when you were talking about intuition, of course, that's, told you to turn around, you missed something. Following your guidance. And that's how I think we get off this planet, is when we can tune into our guidance. And I believe in the previous life, Don, you have to have been an Asian guru of some sort. Past life. So I want to show a picture that Don took of Bob and I.
Oh.
Just stand by. This is a wonderful picture. Can you see that?
No. Yes.
That's
one
a
of
good
our
picture.
favorites. It's one of our favorites. Yeah.
That is good. Very good.
Can you still see it? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
So you wouldn't guess, I don't think, that here's we're in the Tokyo fish market about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, Don. The big fish come in, and we're having a beer. And the back here is, I don't know what we ordered or what we ate, but it's all good. But this is one of our favorite pictures, Don.
That is. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Takoyaki, fried oysters.
Ooh, I
remember.
Wow, you remember that?
The adventures we've had.
Telling me, we read about fried oysters. We want to have fried oysters. And we went to this little izakaya, and they had the fried oysters for breakfast. Kaki fry.
That's a great picture.
The Tokyo
I love that
fried
picture.
oysters.
Thanks, Mike. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming. This has been just a
Yeah.
wonderful, beautiful evening.
Wonderful program. Wonderful
Thank you.
program. Thank you, Don.
Yeah.
Oh,
I enjoyed
my
it. Learned a
pleasure.
lot too. Thank you so much.